Hello, I'm Patrick Howard, the Marketing Director at Stirista. Today I'll be talking with Ajay Gupta, Stirista's CEO, about the topic of email fraud. We'll also give you a few takeaways that you can use to make sure that you aren't dealing with an email vendor that's inflating your opens, clicks, or anything like that. Ajay's been a pretty vocal proponent of email transparency for a few years now, and he recently published a blog on the topic at stirista.com. So let's see what he has to say. So Ajay, in your blog you mentioned some of the lessons that can be learned from the Take 5 Media Group situation. With fraud so rampant in the industry, why are companies still missing it?
That's a great question. I think a lot of it has to do with people being gullible, which I think is generally true. But there's probably more to it because there are so many people that are believing it. And I was thinking about it last week as I was watching this documentary on Netflix called The Great Hack. And there is this kind of belief that there is a lot of data out there and all of these companies have access to it and bad things are being done with the data. And there's obviously companies like Google and Facebook that do have access to this type of data. But by and large, the amount of data that marketing companies like Stirista have is limited to public profiles and things you're sharing online. But because people want to believe that there is something out there that they don't know but other companies know, they have started believing that a two-person shop in Boca Raton has access to 10 million people that are left-handed applesauce eaters in market to buy Toyota. And when you start believing all of these ridiculous ideas and you start thinking that somehow this company that has access to a 10-year-old file will actually be able to predict who is going to buy Toyota tomorrow, you start to think that they can deliver marketing dollars more effectively than anybody else. But at the same time, you're also, most people like their own work, so they're looking at their creative and they're thinking, well, my creative is so much better than everyone else's, so of course I'm going to perform 3 times the industry average, because nobody's looking at their own work and thinking, well, this one looks like total crap, but hey, maybe we'll hit the industry benchmark. If they've spent time on it, they're thinking, well, this is a little bit better than average. Maybe it'll be 3 times the industry average. And they start to feel good about that situation. But I was wondering, Patrick, I know you watched the documentary as well. What were your thoughts on it?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned about a lot of data companies just kind of having access to a lot of publicly available information, because it made me feel like I work at a cigarette company.
Oh, wow. Well, think of us as more of a vaping company without nicotine.
All right. Well, as somebody who doesn't vape in this context, what would the difference be?
Well, I think the key differences are, one is a firm like Cambridge Analytica. It wasn't so much that they were doing data science, it was how they got access to that data. And I think that's a key difference which often gets overlooked, because the fact that you're targeting people because they're the ideal people to sway one way or another, that's not the bad part, but there's so much focus being put on that. That's what marketing and advertising is all about. That's what it's been about for a long time. I think the bad part is, how do you get this data? Is it ethically obtained, or is it being obtained through sort of nefarious sources? But then the other part of it is, when it comes to specifically about email marketing, are the guys that we're working with, are they really prepared to fail? Or are they giving you campaigns that time after time are going to be successful no matter what happens? Because if all campaigns are always successful, that's a problem. That's not a company that's doing well. That's a company that's just delivering fake results time after time. But as marketing managers, marketing directors, CMOs, you have to be prepared to fail. Know that failure is good because you learn what's not working. But when you get into this habit of expecting and demanding constant good results, you miss out on knowing what didn't work because the company is now delivering results that are unrealistic and not real.
So what are some concrete steps people can take to prevent this from happening to them?
Well, first things first, you got to work with a company whose CEO you like. So you could make sure you can have a drink with the CEO. It's one of the chief qualifications to be president as well.
And feels comfortable enough doing it at 10 a.m. without putting it into a coffee cup.
Absolutely. So that's kind of one of the things you want to look for is company culture. But in terms of the email marketing aspect of it, I would say you want to work with a company that is not guaranteeing results. Because too often you are doing things with companies that are coming in without knowing anything about your company, about your campaign. They promise you X percentage of open, and it used to be 10%, but we've had clients say, well, I was expecting 30% open. So there's all sorts of wild theories out there about what the acquisition campaigns look like. And then the second part is forget about all of these metrics. The only metric that really matters is how many people converted. So if you start looking at it that way, it opens up a whole different world of possibility. In fact, you can work backwards and say, if somebody's saying they sent 5,000 clicks your way and only one of them converted, that's a problem too. If only 1 out of 5,000 people are converting, either your landing page is terrible, which is possible, or the clicks being reported are not accurate. So either way you look at it, you really need to think about what do you really care about? Do you really care about how many people saw the ad, how many people clicked on the ad, or do you care about how many people bought from you? And once you start looking at it differently, that's when you begin to understand you want to work with a friendly company and a friendly CEO with 10 a.m. Bloody Marys.
So we've talked about email fraud quite a bit, but how does that kind of tie into other channels like social or display?
Yeah, so luckily display industry is much bigger than email, so there are established players with third-party validation tools in terms of whether or not the traffic is bot or whether it's just regular traffic. So one of the things that you want to do when you ask or solicit an ad agency is ask them, what do you do to prevent fraud? And if they can answer that I have such and such relationship, then you can feel comfortable that they have other people validating the traffic. Social is a little bit harder to do because there is not much insight. It's definitely a black box, walled garden, however you want to call it. But still, there are ways in which you can use analytics tools to decide whether the traffic is working, whether it's converting or not. We have our own product, VIG, not that I'm pitching. But there are other products out there as well from bigger companies like Adobe that can track traffic from social media as well.
So people-based marketing has become one of the newer marketing buzzwords. So how do you see that ties into kind of the whole angle of email fraud?
I've been trying to figure out exactly what it means because, what was before people-based marketing? Was it bot-based marketing? So I see a lot of companies using it. Some of them are bigger, but others are much smaller companies that are tossing the terms out, and it's almost suspicious. Why are they emphasizing so much on people-based marketing? Because we still haven't found life on other planets. So I would have imagined they were marketing to people beforehand too. But Patrick, we've talked a little bit about the email, what we do for clients, but would love to hear your perspective on how you view marketing and what's successful and what's needed on your end of things.
Yeah, so for me, I think the most important part is attribution, being able to kind of tie individual email campaigns back into, larger multi-touch campaigns. And I think that goes for both B2B and B2C marketers, because B2C is increasingly becoming more like B2B, where customers have longer decision chains and buying cycles, and might get hit by 3 or 4 emails and a bunch of display ads and social ads before they end up actually converting. So I think your point about conversions being really the only metric that matters in the end is accurate, because like you said, clicks and opens can be faked, but conversions a bot isn't going to convert or actually buy something in the end.
Right. Yeah, although I have heard of companies having overseas operations where I guess human bots are converting for them.
So one last question. What do you think it is about Stirista's company culture that makes us good at handling email campaigns?
A large part of our culture revolves around competitive sports. And so what's happened, I think, is at other companies, when there's frustrations, they take it out by inflating email traffic. We try to take it out by winning sports championships. So that's a big part of our culture that I think has created an atmosphere that's competitive, but in the right way. And there's channels outside of work where it comes out. And this is something we can probably help other companies with as well if they're struggling with email marketing, display marketing, social marketing. They can certainly reach out to me personally at a.gupta@stirista.com.
All right, well, thanks for joining us, everyone. And it's been a pretty good game going on over there with Phil and Brian. Looks like Brian got yet another win, and as his only fan, that makes me pretty excited. So why don't you guys come over and celebrate with a drink, a 10:30 a.m. drink.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.